Hello everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. On September 15th, the U.S. government submitted a report to Congress designating China as one of the major drug transit or major illicit drug-producing countries. In response, the CCP strongly refuted this designation, claiming that China serves as a model for global drug control, while the U.S. is the primary major drug-consuming country, which disqualifies it from criticizing China's anti-drug efforts. But is this really the case? In this episode, I'd like to present that the production, sales, and trafficking of drugs have long been a state industry and behavior in the CCP-occupied China, using drugs to harm enemy countries, causing them to lose their combat capabilities, is also part of the CCP's unrestricted warfare. It's not about them not cracking down on illegal drug trafficking, because this is, in fact, a part of their state behavior. First, let's watch a statement made by the CCP's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin on June 8th of this year. At that time, U.S. Ambassador to China Burns had just accused China of not stopping the production of fentanyl, and Wang Wenbin's speech was in response to this. Please pay attention to the English subtitles I added.
请你向伯恩斯大使问一个问题：2019年5月，中国政府本着人道主义精神，整类列管芬太尼类物质，为防范其非法制贩及滥用发挥了重要作用。美国也是重要的受益国之一。但美国政府为什么忘恩负义，无理制裁中国公安部物证鉴定中心和国家毒品实验室等机构，并多次起诉制裁中国企业和个人，严重破坏双方的禁毒合作基础呢？美方究竟是要寻求通过合作来解决国内的毒品问题，还是把打压遏制中国放在更重要的位置呢？你可以去问一问伯恩斯大使。
Okay. I don't know if you noticed the following hidden message in this short speech. First, why did the U.S. government sanction the China National Narcotics Laboratory and the Ministry of Public Security's Forensic Science Research Center? These are both Chinese state departments and institutions. I would say that the U.S. government must have obtained evidence that these Chinese institutions are manufacturing or trafficking drugs to the U.S. The second point to note is the last two sentences of Wang Wenbin's speech. He asks, is the U.S. seeking to address its domestic drug problem through cooperation, or does it place greater importance on suppressing and restraining China? You can go ask Ambassador Burns. He's openly trying to blackmail the U.S. If you want to solve your domestic drug problem, stop suppressing China, stop restricting the sales of chips to China. Otherwise, don't expect to solve your drug problems. The fact that he can make such threats indicates that whether or not they want to solve the U.S. domestic drug problem is something that the CCP can control and will. If the CCP wants to solve it, it can be solved. If not, then it can't be solved. This, to some extent, shows that drug production and trafficking are state behaviors of the CCP. Otherwise, how could they use something that doesn't belong to them to threaten others? So why do I say that drug production and trafficking are state behaviors of the CCP? Let's take a look at the CCP's long history of drug production and trafficking. Let's start by listening to a song that used to be famous throughout China. This song praises the story of the 359th Brigade led by Wang Zeng, which was stationed in a place called Nanniwan before the CCP took power. They conducted the so-called Great Production Movement. I used to hear this song a lot when I was a child. Okay, I am impressed. Nanniwan is a place located 45 kilometers southwest of Yan'an in Shanxi province, China. It has historically been a barren and desolate land. In 1941, the CCP's army moved to Nanniwan to cultivate the land, making a fortune and solving the CCP's financial crisis. At that time, the CCP regime was still illegal and was established with the support of the Soviet government, so it also called itself the Soviet government. During the period of the anti-Japanese war, while the nationalist Kuomintang forces were bravely resisting this Japanese invasion, the CCP was planting and trafficking opium here. Peter Vanandamera, a correspondent for TASS, the Soviet news agency, revealed in his book Yan'an Diary that when he asked the CCP leader Mao Zedong about the CCP's opium business in Yan'an, a CCP leader called Deng Fa admitted it and said, "We used to send out a cart full of salt, but in return we'd get a deflected money bag, sometimes just one. Now, when we send out one bag of opium, we can get back a whole cartload of money. We use this money to buy weapons from the Nationalist Party, and then we use these weapons to deal with them." So that was a direct admission from a CCP leader. In my childhood, I was deeply impressed by a heroic figure, Zhang Side, whom Mao Zedong specifically wrote an article to praise. This person on the left is Zhang Side, and these are some propaganda posters about him later. Our textbooks say that he was a soldier in Yan'an. He died while making charcoal due to the collapse of a charcoal kiln. Mao Zedong said he died for the benefit of the people, and his death was heavier than mountain tide. Many years later, it was revealed that Zhang Side did not die making charcoal. Yan'an is located on the North Plateau, where there are very few trees, so there was no firewood to produce charcoal in the first place. In fact, he died while participating in the production of opium, a task that needed to be kept secret. Actually, in August 2013, a Chinese magazine called Yanhuang Chunqiu published an article titled Special Commodity Trade During the Yan'an Period. The article was written by historian Hong Zhengkuai. The article cited a report published by the CCP's Northwest Financial Office on February 18, 1948. According to this report, the proportion of opium trade in the financial income of the CCP's Yan'an regime was about 40% in 1942, about 41% in 1943, and about 27% in 1944, and about 40% in 1945. Please note that this is the CCP's own historic material, which is enough to prove that they say no opium, no CCP is absolutely true. In other words, the CCP's rise is closely related to the production and trafficking of drugs. Regarding this history, the CCP naturally never mentions it and even uses the song we played earlier to glorify the drug trafficking history, claiming that the CCP conducted a great revolutionary production movement in Yan'an. By the way, the Yanhuang Chunqiu magazine was founded in 1991 and was received praise from Xi Jinping's father, Xi Zhongxun. It had a political reformist and liberal orientation. However, due to its frequent publication of articles related to the history of the CCP and the sensitive events, as well as its viewpoint differing from the official narrative, it was suspended in 2013, and all previous articles were removed from the internet. In 2016, the publication resumed, but all management positions were replaced by individuals designated by the authorities. The history of drug production and trafficking didn't end after the CCP took power. In 2013, a Chinese-American writer named Zhang Youpu published his executive investigative report. He stated that in 2005, a newspaper in Chicago published an article by one of his friends from Xinjiang. The article said that in the early 1970s, the friend joined the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps and started farming at the Shihezi farm northwest of Urumqi. They were responsible for cultivating poppies, and they mass-produced opium. The opium was then transported by the People's Liberation Army to Hong Kong and other areas for distribution worldwide. This article surprised Zhang Youpu because he had never heard of the CCP mass-producing opium in Xinjiang after they came to power. Later, at a gathering with friends, Zhang Youpu met with the author of the article and conducted an interview. He also interviewed 4 or 5 friends from Xinjiang, all of whom confirmed that everything described in the article was true, and they had all personally grown poppies. They explained that since the establishment of the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps in 1950, poppy cultivation had always been one of the most important crops and the main source of income for the corps. It was the enormous profits and wealth created by over 50 years of drug production and sales that gave Xinjiang its reputation as Jiangnan on the borderland. Jiangnan means the land of abundance. The Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps is a semi-military organization with strict military discipline. The consequences of disclosing strict military secrets are unimaginable. It was only after they came to the United States and acquired U.S. citizenship that they were able to openly publish the true situation in American newspapers. Zhang Youpu pointed out that one significant fact to note is that the founder of the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps and the leader of the Nanniwan production are the same person, the famous Wang Zeng of the CCP. He was known as the founding general of the CCP, a former member of the Central Military Commission, and the vice president of the People's Republic of China. This was Wang Zeng during the Nanniwan period, and this was him during the Xinjiang period. After Zhang Youpu's article was published, he received a lot of feedback. One reader said, "I worked in Heilongjiang farm, specializing in cultivating and producing opium. Another reader mentioned, I worked in Yunnan farm, specializing in cultivating and producing opium. Yet another reader added, I harvested poppies. Only the duty squads could plant them. The duty squads consisted of discharged but re-enlisted soldiers and young people with good performance, armed and trained. We couldn't directly call it poppy. We gave it a code name, number 100. Another reader said, what's the big deal? I've planted and harvested poppies. It's for military readiness supplies. We called it number 100. I planted them in the 70s and 80s. From the feedback above, it's evident that poppy cultivation wasn't limited to Xinjiang. It also occurred in Heilongjiang and Yunnan military farms. YouTuber Jiang Feng, with over 1 million subscribers, recently dedicated an episode to discussing the dark history of the CCP planting drugs. He claims that the CCP directly planned, initiated, and is currently waging an unrestricted warfare on the Western world through drugs. Jiang Feng revealed that he spent some time in Qiqihar in northeastern China in the late 1990s, where he personally witnessed and participated in the comprehensive survey and destruction of opium cultivation by the Chinese Ministry of Public Security in the Daxing-Anling area. He mentioned that in June 2000, the State Council of the People's Republic of China issued a government notice known as the 27th Government Notice, specifically mentioned the opium eradication events he experienced in the Daxing-Anling region. I've checked, and this is indeed the 27th notice he mentioned. This notice actually reveals the facts of drug production and cultivation in China. The notice states, quote, local governments in key mountainous and forest areas organize personnel every year to investigate and monitor the illegal cultivation of drug-producing plants in mountainous and forest areas. Since 1992, the National Narcotics Control Commission and the Forestry Department have used modern technology to organize aerial surveys and anti-drug operations in pristine forest areas, etc. However, the notice didn't reveal the size of the drug investigation area or the results of drug eradication. These remain the top secrets of the CCP. This is because the CCP does not want people to know that China is actually a major drug-producing country. In fact, drug cultivation under the pretext of meeting pharmaceutical raw material needs has always been under the control of the CCP itself, and it can only be controlled by the most trustworthy individuals. Jiang Feng stated that in the 1990s, there were 3 reasons why the CCP conducted large-scale eradication of poppy cultivation in the Daxing-Anling and Lianhua mountain regions. First, it was to cooperate with the global anti-drug movement initiated mainly by the US. The theme of this movement was green in exchange for drugs, meaning that if drug cultivators didn't eradicate drug production, they would face economic sanctions and military strikes. However, if they did eradicate it, they would receive capital aid and assistance to switch to high-value crops. The Chinese government received substantial compensation as a result. Second, China was in the final stages of applying to join the WTO, and the CCP needed to show goodwill and cooperation with international rules and actions to gain favor with the US. Third, this operation allowed the CCP to crack down on poppy cultivation and drug sources that had non-existed among the Chinese population, while ensuring that the production of critical drug precursors remained in the hands of the CCP insiders. However, Jiang Feng mentioned that after this anti-drug campaign, drug production in China did not end. Early in this century, Shenzhen police cracked down on the largest drug case in China at that time. They masterminded a Hong Kong resident named Zhuang Chuchen, and his gang used pharmaceutical companies and factories as a cover to massively produce and sell the most popular drug of that era, crystal meth. It was discovered that they had as much as 30 tons of crystal meth, while the total amount of crystal meth circulating worldwide that year was just over 10 tons. In other words, one Chinese drug trafficker's drug quantity was enough to supply the world for more than 2 years. Jiang Feng explained that natural raw materials are also ingredients of synthetic drugs like crystal meth, with the premier ingredient being ephedrine, deprived from the ephedrine plant. The arid, sandy soils of northwest China were most suitable for the growth of ephedra. The cultivation of ephedra by the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps began in the 1990s. This means that even as opium cultivation gradually exited the market, the CCP continued to control the supply of raw materials for the newest drugs. Jiang Feng stated that on April 25, 2023, an article was published by China News Network. The title of the article is "Why Can Traditional Chinese Medicine Planting Become a New Channel for Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps to Increase Income?" This article clearly pointed out that ephedra is a high-value crop for income generation. However, when I checked this article while preparing for this show, there was no mention of ephedra. Jiang Feng's program was released on June 1st. So my guess is that after his program was published, the CCP deleted the mention of ephedra from this article. However, if you search online using ephedra Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps, you can find numerous reports showing that the Xinjiang Production and Cooperation Corps is cultivating ephedra, which is a raw material for synthesizing crystal meth. As you know, during the 3-year period of COVID and under the promotion of the Chinese authorities, the traditional Chinese medicine called Lianhua Jingwen capsules were widely used by the Chinese people to treat COVID-19, and this medicine contains ephedra components. With such a large quantity required, it would have been impossible to supply without large-scale intensive production. This means that the Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps never gave up growing drugs. They just changed the type of drug they cultivate. According to a report by the U.S. government, more than 109,000 lives were lost to drug overdose in 2022. A study by the Brookings Institution shows that, quote, since 1999, drug overdoses have killed approximately 1 million Americans, and overdose lethality that has increased significantly since 2012, when synthetic opioids from China began supplying the U.S. demand for illicit opioids. Even though China placed the entire class of fentanyl-type drugs and two key fentanyl precursors under a controlled regulatory regime in May 2019, it remains the principal, if indirect, source of U.S. fentanyl. Mexican criminal groups source fentanyl precursors and increasingly pre-precursors from China, and then traffic finished fentanyl from Mexico to the United States, unquote. In fact, for those familiar with China's situation, it's known that China maintains very strict control over chemical materials. It's impossible to import such large quantities of raw materials that can be used to produce fentanyl without the government's permission, especially considering the massive amount of fentanyl flooding to the U.S. market. Only government-level production and distribution can meet such a high demand. Guo Jun, the chief editor of the Chinese edition of the Epoch Times, recently revealed in a television program that a Chinese customs official told her that he couldn't believe that such a highly toxic substance as fentanyl could be manufactured outside official controls, especially on such a large scale, and sent to the United States. He believed that it would be impossible without government involvement. We all remembered that during the COVID lockdown, Chinese people couldn't even get groceries without relying on government distribution. In other words, when the CCP wants to control something, it is entirely capable of doing so. So how is it possible that they can't control the production and export of fentanyl or fentanyl precursors? As you know, the CCP proposed the concept of unrestricted warfare in the 1990s. The book Unrestricted Warfare outlines 3 categories and 24 types of unrestricted warfare, one of which is drugs, and it's separated from biochemical warfare and is an independent category. As I've discussed in previous programs, Xi Jinping has long made the strategic decision to engage in a showdown with the U.S., making the U.S. its #1 enemy. So using drugs to eliminate the enemy's population, creating chaos, and sowing division is part of the CCP's unrestricted warfare and a real campaign to destroy the enemy country. While destroying the enemy, they can also make a lot of money. So why wouldn't they do it? Well, that's all for today. Please remember to subscribe to my channel and double check if you are still subscribed. If you enjoy my content, please kindly share my channel and videos and visit my website at jenniferzengblog.com. That's jenniferzengblog.com for membership or donations to support my effort. Thank you. Have a nice weekend and see you next time.